At 3 a.m., a missing wad of cash turned a quiet sleepover into 90 minutes of terror and left one child never waking up. Andres Martina appears in court records and news reports as a man from Milwaukee. He was in his early 50s at the time. Little reliable public information exists about his background or family. There is no confirmed birth date or full biography. He lived in Milwaukee with his disabled mother. She was the boy's great-grandmother. Martina was caring for 2 grandsons during a sleepover. The older was Andre Smith II, age 12. The younger was his 8-year-old brother. In late August 2021, Martina discovered his wallet open. Cash was missing. Suspicion immediately fell on 12-year-old Andre Smith II. Martina demanded answers, but the boy denied it, turning his pockets inside out to prove there was nothing there. The exchange grew tense, voices rising in the quiet house until Martina suddenly lashed out. What followed was a prolonged outburst of aggressiveness, using whatever objects were within reach: a sledgehammer, a mallet, a coat rack, 2 belts, and a cane. It went on for as long as 90 minutes. The younger boy tried to escape, first running outside, then locking himself in the bathroom, but Martina forced him back. Their great-grandmother, woken by the noise, could do nothing but watch from her room, her disability preventing her from stepping in. By the time it ended, Andre Smith II had sustained fatal head injuries. His younger brother survived, but with a broken finger, cuts to his head, and extensive bruising. Prosecutors say Martina acted in anger because he believed his grandson had taken money from him. In court, Martina said he acted in self-defense. He claimed the boy pointed a gun at him. Prosecutors rejected that claim. They argued the extent of the injuries made self-defense impossible. Martina was charged with 5 felony counts. The charges included causing a person's passing in the first degree, repeated physical harm to a child that led to a passing, neglect of a child that led to a passing, child mistreatment with intent to harm, and possession of a firearm as a convicted felon. He pleaded not guilty. A jury found him guilty in May 2022. The judge described the case as one of the most severe she had seen in nearly 38 years on the bench. Martina was sentenced to 2 life terms, plus 23 additional years. Now turn to a case where the harm wasn't a single moment, it was a slow burn that stretched over months. James Sasser Jr. lived in West Yellowstone, Montana. His family and neighbors saw him as a grandfather. But in 2020, something terrible happened, involving his 12-year-old grandson, James Alex Hurley. James Sasser was born in 1964. Details about his early life are limited. By 2020, he was living with family members, including the boy. The home life had many problems. Investigators in the court found the house was not a safe place for the child. Over time, the boy suffered repeated harm and neglect at home. The evidence showed it was not a single event. The harm happened again and again. Neighbors and relatives later said the boy was left without proper care. He also endured severe mistreatment. He was physically harmed and was denied enough food. Reports said he suffered both physical injuries and emotional distress over weeks and months. The injuries and lack of care eventually led to his passing. Some family members knew about the situation. Others say they felt unable to stop it. Several relatives were later convicted for their roles. The court found that people who lived in the home either took part in the mistreatment or allowed it to continue. This showed a serious failure of protection inside the family. Authorities never fully agreed on a clear personal motive. The case did not look like a single act of rage. Instead, the pattern pointed to long-term neglect, cruelty, and an effort to control others in the household. Medical reports that came to court confirmed severe trauma and malnutrition. Witnesses described the boy's injuries and the poor conditions he lived in before he passed. When charges were filed, Sasser entered a guilty plea. By admitting guilt early, he avoided a long trial. The plea meant the court did not have to decide guilt based only on witness testimony. During sentencing, the judge reviewed medical reports, witness statements, and how the family failed to protect the child. The judge sentenced Sasser to 100 years in a Montana state prison. Other relatives also received prison terms after being found responsible. Because Sasser pleaded guilty, there was no separate hearing about a possible capital sentence. There are no public records of any special final statements or final meal tied to such a process. The focus at sentencing was on the facts in the case and on holding people responsible. As of 2025, James Sasser Jr. is serving his sentence in a Montana state prison. He is about 61 years old. The case of young James Alex is a painful example of how harm can happen inside a family. It also shows why communities and agencies must be alert and ready to protect children. Up next is a truck fire in a remote Texas field, and inside, a discovery that shook even seasoned investigators. Joel Soto was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. By the early 2010s, his life got harder. His daughter, the mother of his grandchildren, was arrested and put in prison on charges related to controlled substances. Joel became the main caregiver for the children. One of them was 2-year-old Jeremy Soto. Caring for very young children is a big responsibility. It is harder when a caregiver has unstable living conditions. Joel's substance use made things worse. Neighbors described a chaotic home. They reported signs of substance use and neglect. People wondered how a household like that could keep small children safe. The family had few other options, so no one stepped in soon enough. On November 16, 2013, a vehicle was found burning in a remote area. Inside the truck was 2-year-old Jeremy. He was not alive when first responders reached the scene. Authorities opened a formal investigation right away. Examinations and tests turned up worrying facts. Toxicology results showed Jeremy had an illegal substance in his system. The amount was high enough to be lethal. That finding suggested he was exposed to the substance before the fire started. As investigators followed leads, they uncovered a troubling timeline. The evidence indicated Joel had allowed Jeremy to ingest the substance. Whether that happened by accident or on purpose was part of the inquiry. What followed made the case more serious. Investigators concluded Joel set the truck on fire with Jeremy inside. The fire appeared intended to destroy evidence. Officials arrested Joel once the investigation pointed to him. He faced multiple charges, including counts of homicide, manslaughter, injury to a child, and arson. The charges matched the facts investigators had collected. The trial began in June 2017. The courtroom was full of tension. Prosecutors presented detailed evidence. They showed how Joel's substance use affected his judgment. They described the state of the home and how Joel cared for the children. Witnesses spoke about what they had seen and heard before the fire. Joel's defense said Jeremy's passing was an accident. They argued there was no intent to harm the child. They also suggested the fire might have started by mistake or out of panic. The jury heard both sides and reviewed the evidence closely. After deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Joel Soto was found guilty on all counts, including homicide, manslaughter, injury to a child, and arson. The decision brought relief to many in the community and to family members who had suffered. At sentencing, the judge focused on how serious the case was. A young child had been exposed to a dangerous stimulant, and then a fire was used to hide what happened. The court gave Joel a long prison term. He was sentenced to 60 years behind bars. Now, how did one man terrorize entire communities for over a decade without being caught? Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. was born in 1945 in Bath, New York. He grew up in a strict home. The family life was often difficult. His father was a World War II veteran. That man reportedly had post-traumatic stress disorder. That added tension at home. The household could be harsh. Some of those early experiences may have influenced DeAngelo later. Experts still debate how much they mattered. DeAngelo served in the U.S. Navy from 1964 to 1968. After his service, he went into law enforcement. He worked as a police officer in Exeter, California, from 1973 to 1976. In 1975, he was accused of shoplifting tools. That accusation led to his dismissal from the Auburn Police Department. The incident cast a long shadow over his career in policing. From the mid-1970s through the mid-1980s, he carried out a long series of illegal acts across California. He used several aliases, including the Visalia Ransacker, the East Area Rapist, and the original Night Stalker. These names were used by the media and investigators as the case unfolded. The span of these incidents is generally given as 1974 to 1986. His actions began with burglaries in Visalia, California. He entered homes and took items. He sometimes left signs that made residents uneasy. Investigators said he occasionally rearranged household objects or left unusual items in plain sight. Those early break-ins set the pattern for later offenses. Between 1976 and 1979, he committed at least 51 incidents of forced intimate contact in the Sacramento area. He usually entered homes at night. He restrained people and forced unwanted intimate acts. Many of the victims were women who were alone or at home with children. These incidents caused widespread fear in the communities affected. Some survivors reported receiving disturbing phone calls from an unknown man, both before and after the incidents. After he moved to Southern California, the cases changed in severity. From 1979 to 1986, he is linked to at least 13 incidents where people lost their lives. Many of those victims were couples. He would confront them in their homes and restrain them before taking their lives. In one case, he used a distinctive diamond knot to bind a victim, a method later recognized as a signature. The nature of those events shocked the public. Investigators were left with few clear leads for many years. For decades, he avoided capture. The cases went cold. Investigators could not connect all the incidents to one person. The breakthrough came in 2018. Advances in genetic family tracing forensic genealogy allowed authorities to identify D'Angelo as a prime suspect. He was arrested on April 24, 2018, in Citrus Heights, California. The arrest came after investigators matched DNA from old scene evidence to a relative's profile on a public genealogy website. In June 2020, he entered guilty pleas for his role in 13 fatal incidents and multiple unlawful detentions connected to thefts. As part of the plea deal, prosecutors agreed not to seek the most severe penalty. On August 21, 2020, a judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At sentencing, D'Angelo spoke to the court. He said, "I've listened to all your statements, each one of them, and I'm truly sorry to everyone I have hurt. Thank you, Your Honor." Those words were brief. They were a rare moment of direct acknowledgement after many years of silence. As of 2025, Joseph James D'Angelo is serving his life sentence at California State Prison, Corcoran. He is kept in protective custody because of the high profile of the case and the risks involved with housing him among the general population. After a case solved by science, consider a different fight won, about politics, evidence, and a long legal battle over a police officer's end. The next case began as a late-night traffic stop and ended in one of the most debated legal battles in U.S. history. Mumia Abu-Jamal was born Wesley Cook in 1954 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He grew up in a working-class neighborhood. He saw unfair treatment and rough behavior by police from an early age. Those experiences pushed him toward activism. At 15, in 1969, he helped start the Philadelphia chapter of the Black Panther Party. The group worked against racial inequality and excessive use of force by police. Around this time, he took the name Mumia Abu-Jamal. The name reflected his African roots and his role as a father. He later became a journalist. He used his work to tell stories about people with little power. He reported for different outlets, including National Public Radio. Many people praised his reporting for being strong and direct. His public views and past activism made him a target for law enforcement and government agencies. On December 9, 1981, at about 3:55 in the morning, Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner stopped a car driven by William Cook, Abu-Jamal's younger brother, near 13th and Locust Streets. A physical fight happened between Officer Faulkner and William Cook. Abu-Jamal was driving a taxi nearby and saw the fight. He went over to the scene. He was arrested soon after. Authorities charged him in the fatal shooting of Officer Faulkner. Many people who study the case say the arrest and conviction were influenced by Abu-Jamal's political activity. They point to differences in witness statements and to problems with how physical evidence was handled. These issues, they say, may have hurt the fairness of the case. The trial started in June 1982. The prosecution presented eyewitnesses who said they saw Abu-Jamal fire a gun at Officer Faulkner. The defense said Abu-Jamal was innocent. They argued he had been framed because of his political beliefs. The jury found him guilty of first-degree homicide. The judge gave him the state's most severe penalty. Observers raised concerns about the trial itself. They accused the presiding judge, Albert Sabo, of bias against Abu-Jamal. People also questioned whether Abu-Jamal had strong legal help. There were claims that the defense did not get access to evidence that might have helped them. After the conviction, Abu-Jamal's legal team filed many appeals. They challenged the fairness of the trial and the use of the harshest penalty. In 2001, a federal judge found that the instructions given to the jury when deciding the penalty were flawed. That ruling removed Abu-Jamal from the prison unit reserved for inmates facing the state's most severe punishment. In 2011, the Philadelphia district attorney said prosecutors would no longer seek the harshest penalty in Abu-Jamal's case. The DA cited the long legal fight and the difficulty of retrying the penalty phase. Instead, Abu-Jamal's sentence was changed to life imprisonment without the chance of release. As of 2025, Mumia Abu-Jamal remains in a Pennsylvania prison. He still writes and speaks about racial injustice, police treatment, and problems in the prison system. His case draws attention around the world. Supporters call for his release. They also use his case to talk about how the justice system treats political activists and people of color. In the next case, what began as a prison dinner visit ended with 2 bodies hidden in a car trunk. If you find stories like these important, consider subscribing for more. Donald Broadnax was born in 1961 in Birmingham, Alabama. In August 1977, when he was 16, he shot a friend, 19-year-old Gregory Manson. Reports say Broadnax fired 6 shots, reloaded, then fired 3 more. Manson did not survive. Broadnax was arrested about 3 months later. He was convicted of second-degree homicide and given a 99-year sentence. He became eligible for parole after serving part of that time. Broadnax was granted parole in 1986. He went back to Birmingham. He soon violated parole by associating with a local dealer of controlled substances and by being found with guns during a police raid. He was returned to prison. In November 1992, Broadnax joined a work release program. He worked as a painter at Wellborn Forest Products in Alexander City. His boss described him as mild-mannered and respectful. On April 25, 1996, his wife, Hector Jan Stamps, then about 42, visited him at work. She brought dinner. Her 4-year-old grandson, D'Angelo, came with her. They arrived around 6 p.m. Shortly after they arrived, Broadnax struck Jan with a plank of lumber inside the factory. She did not survive. He put her body in the trunk of her white Dodge Aries. A co-worker later said the child was still in the back seat when he saw the car. Broadnax drove the car toward Birmingham. The vehicle was later found near Ellerton Village, a neighborhood he knew. There he took D'Angelo out of the car. He struck the child in a secluded area. The child did not survive. Broadnax put both bodies in the trunk. He left the car in front of a vacant house. That same night, at about 10:45 p.m., guard Mark Chastain and his wife Kathy saw someone who fit Broadnax's description inside the factory and near the exit. Days later, investigators found a blood-stained work uniform and a pair of Red Wing boots hidden under another inmate's bunk. DNA from the victims matched the items. The uniform was identified as Broadnax's. Investigators also found an earring at the factory that matched one inside Jan's car. One employee testified he believed the child in the back seat was still alive when he spoke with Broadnax. The prosecution said Broadnax blamed Jan for blocking his parole and feared she planned to end their relationship. The defense said the uniform could have been stolen or swapped. They also argued the timeline from Alexander City to Birmingham was too tight for Broadnax to have done both acts. The state presented witnesses to show he could have been there in the time given. In June 1997, a jury heard the case. After less than 2 hours of deliberation, the jury found Broadnax guilty on 4 counts of capital-level homicide. The jury then gave him the state's most severe sentence. The trial court accepted that sentence. Appeals followed. In 2000, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals ordered a new sentencing hearing because of errors in jury instructions. The court later upheld the sentence, saying the aggravating evidence outweighed mitigating factors. Further appeals were denied in 2012. In 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to review the case. As of 2025, Broadnax remains at Holman Correctional Facility in Alabama, serving the state's most severe sentence. The next individual installed home security systems by day and stalked victims by night. Dennis Lynn Rader was born in 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas. He was the oldest of 4 sons. His parents were Dorothea May and William Elvin Rader. They raised him in a strict Christian home. The family lived in Wichita, Kansas. As a child, he liked novels, comic books, and Cub Scouts. Later, he said he felt neglected when he was young. That feeling may have helped shape harmful thoughts he had as a teenager. From an early age, Rader had disturbing private fantasies about controlling and hurting women. He also mistreated small animals. He would harm them and leave them lifeless. He engaged in secret behaviors such as spying on female neighbors while wearing women's clothing and stealing underwear. These actions signaled serious problems that would come back later in his life. Rader finished college at Wichita State University in 1979. His degree was in administration of justice. He held several ordinary jobs. He worked as an assembler for the Coleman Company. He installed security systems for ADT Security Services. Some of the people he worked for were homeowners who later worried about the acts he had been linked to. In 1991, he took a job as a dog catcher and compliance officer in Park City, Kansas. He also belonged to Christ Lutheran Church in Wichita. There he served as president of the church council and as a Cub Scout leader. Those roles helped him keep a normal public image while he hid his other life. Rader's first known victims were the Otero family. That happened on January 15, 1974. 4 members of the family were bound, hurt, and left lifeless. 2 of the victims were children. This event began a pattern that went on for years. rder called himself BTK. He used that name to describe how he bound victims, caused pain, and took their lives. Over time, he sent letters to police and the media. The letters described what he had done and mocked investigators for not finding him. In 1974, rder tried to take the life of Catherine Bright. She survived. He later admitted he had wanted her gone. Other people who later lost their lives to him included Shirley Vian, Nancy Fox, Maureen Hedge, Vicky Wagerly, and Josephine Otero, the mother of the first victims. Each of these cases showed careful planning. rder sometimes returned to the scenes afterward. He did this to relive what had happened. rder stopped this kind of behavior in 1991. He stayed quiet for more than a decade. Many people thought he had stopped or had been caught. In 2004, he began sending letters again. One letter went to a local newspaper. That letter included a word puzzle. Analysts worked on the puzzle and traced its clues back to him. He was arrested in February 2005. At his trial, rder pleaded guilty to 10 counts of first-degree homicide. Families of the victims gave impact statements in court. rder stayed mostly calm and showed little emotion during the proceedings. On August 18, 2005, the judge gave him 10 consecutive life sentences with no chance of release. rder did not speak publicly at sentencing. He did write letters to his daughter, Carrie Rawson, from prison. In one letter he wrote, "You will always be my baby girl I raised, right, proud, independent, and now as a grown adult with many years of love to give." In another message, he said he felt sorry and wrote, "The dark side took me away." Those letters give a small view into the mind of a man who had lived a long double life. Gary Leon Ridgway was born in 1949 in Salt Lake City, Utah. He was the second of 3 sons. His parents were Thomas and Mary Ridgway. His mother was strict. She used corporal punishment for small things. Ridgway later said he had mixed feelings about her. He felt anger and also a confusing physical attraction. He even admitted to having thoughts about harming her. His father drove a bus for a living. The father often complained about people who worked on the streets along his route. Ridgway did not do well in school. He showed signs of dyslexia. His IQ was recorded in the low 80s. When he was 16, he led a 6-year-old boy into the woods. He targeted the boy with a sharp object and injured him in the torso. The boy survived that incident. That event showed a pattern of serious harm that would come up again later. Ridgway's aggressive behavior in public began to be noticed in the early 1980s. The first case tied to him in public records is a 16-year-old girl who went missing in July 1982. Her body was found a week later in the Green River. Over the next 20 years, many similar cases appeared in the Seattle and Tacoma areas. Most of the victims were women who worked on the streets. In several cases, victims were picked up in a vehicle. Their bodies were later found in remote locations. He would sometimes return to those locations afterward. His method often involved getting women into his vehicle. He then performed intimate acts with them. After that, he would cut off their breathing and leave their remains in out-of-the-way spots. He was able to avoid arrest for years. Investigators think his careful planning and the unstable lives of many victims helped him stay free. Police suspected him early on, but it was advances in forensic science that changed the case. In 2001, new DNA testing linked his genetic material to samples taken from victims. The match gave investigators the proof they needed. In 2003, Ridgway entered a guilty plea on 48 counts of aggravated homicide. He accepted a sentence of life in prison without the chance of parole. The plea deal kept him from facing capital punishment. During his statement at sentencing, he said, "I hope that they can find a way to forgive me." As of 2025, Gary Ridgway is serving his sentence at the Washington State Penitentiary. Officials continue to review cold cases to see if he had a role in other unresolved cases. Up next is One River, 5 Bodies, and a Roofer No One Suspected. Carl Millard Patton Jr. was born in 1949 in Georgia. He lived most of his life in that state. He lived in DeKalb, Clayton, and Henry counties. In 1968, he married Norma. They had 2 daughters. One daughter was born in 1970. The other was born in 1977. Patton worked in construction. He learned several trades and spent years working as a roofer. He kept that job up until his final arrest. Between 1973 and 1977, Patton was tied to a series of disturbing incidents across Georgia. Investigators later linked him to at least 5 separate cases where people passed. In 2003, DNA evidence connected him to some of those cases. Those cases are often called the Flint River cases. They started to attract attention in 1977. In 2003, police arrested Patton in connection with 31-year-old Liddy Matthews Evans. She had been shot in the head, wrapped in a weighted sleeping bag, and put into a river. Minutes after the arrest, Norma told police she would testify against Carl if she received immunity. She said Carl and a man named Joe Cleveland were involved in several cases going back to late 1977. Patton's name also came up in the case of Fred Wyatt and Betty Jo Eflin in November 1977. Norma said Marie Jackson Wyatt, Fred's common-law wife, had taken out a life insurance policy on him. According to Norma, Marie hired Patton to carry out the job and promised $15,000. Patton agreed, and Norma said he and Cleveland followed through with the plan. Betty Jo was left in the Flint River, while Fred was placed in his car on the railroad tracks. A train later struck the car, making the incident appear to be an accident. In December 1977, Patton and Cleveland were also linked to the cases of Joe Cleveland and his roommate, Liddy Evans. According to the accounts Norma gave, both men were shot, their bodies were hidden, and some evidence was destroyed. Their remains were later found in the Flint River. In 2003, Patton made an unexpected confession about another case. He said he and Cleveland had been hired in early 1973 to deal with Richard Russell Jackson, Marie Jackson Wyatt's first husband. Patton said Marie told him Richard had been mistreating. Patton said he agreed to the plan. On March 9, 1973, he and Cleveland picked Jackson up, drove to a wooded area, and shot him. At trial, Gladys Elaine Jackson, the victim's daughter, surprised the courtroom by standing and thanking Patton for what happened to her father. Patton's first trial in 2003 took place in Clayton County. He faced charges in the cases of Fred Wyatt and Betty Jo Eflin. Norma was the prosecution's main witness. She described the insurance policy, the payment offer, and how Patton and Cleveland carried out the plan. Patton pleaded guilty on March 8th. He said he felt remorse. The court gave him 2 life sentences, with a chance of parole after serving 20 years. After that, authorities moved him to DeKalb County to face charges in the Cleveland Evans case. Norma later pleaded guilty to related charges. She received 12 months probation and a $1,000 fine. On March 15th, Patton pleaded guilty in that case as well. The judge gave him 2 more life sentences. Investigators briefly considered whether Patton might have been involved in the passing of his daughter, Melissa Wolfenbarger. He was later cleared as a suspect. In August 2024, Melissa's husband, Christopher Wolfenbarger, was arrested in connection with her case. He says he believed his wife had left him, and he continues to say he is innocent. As of 2025, Patton was being held at Dodge State Prison in Chester, Georgia. In the next story, what began as a temporary stay for his family ended in an unthinkable act. Philip Hughes was a 63-year-old man living in Richland Hills, Texas. People in his neighborhood knew him as a quiet and unassuming person. Before what happened on January 1st, 2023, there was nothing unusual about him. The only trouble he had with the law was a conviction in 2020 for driving under the influence. For that, he served 90 days in jail. This was the only time he had any legal issues in Tarrant County. Hughes lived alone in his house on Labadie Drive, but for a short time, his 8-year-old grandson, Brenham McDonald, and Brenham's parents moved in with him. It was supposed to be a temporary arrangement. Unfortunately, it turned into a tragic event that changed many lives. On the morning of January 1st, 2023, around 7:50 a.m., emergency workers were called to Hughes's home. Inside one of the bedrooms, they found Brenham unresponsive, with serious wounds on his neck and chest. Near him, there was a sharp object. Police quickly focused on Hughes as the main person involved. They found him about 1 block away, walking toward the officers with his hands up. Brenham's parents were at the house during this time, but they were not hurt. When the police first shared information about the event, they did not say why this happened. Since Hughes had no previous reports of mistreatment or trouble with his family, many people were confused. Family members and neighbors could not understand why Hughes would harm his grandson. Brenham's great-grandmother, Linda Hubbard, said, "It's hard to find words for this. When my daughter called me, I just couldn't believe it. The family was left trying to make sense of something that seemed to have no reason." Philip Hughes faced a serious charge called capital homicide under Texas law. In January 2024, he pleaded guilty to the charge as part of an agreement in court. This plea deal led to a sentence of 35 years in prison. The boy's mother supported this decision, hoping it would bring some closure. The court handled the case quickly. Hughes accepted full responsibility for what happened. The 35-year prison sentence was given without any chance for early release. This showed how seriously the court viewed the situation. The local community was still shocked and hurt. The legal result gave them a sense of justice, but it did not make the emotional pain any easier. Up next is one unlocked gun in a Michigan home that changed a grandfather's life and ended another. Carl Robart was 63 years old. He lived in Garfield Township, Newaygo County, Michigan. He was a grandfather. His life changed in a very sad way because of a moment of carelessness. On April 1st, 2024, his 5-year-old grandson, Braxton Dykstra, was seriously hurt in Robart's home. The injury happened when a 6-year-old relative found a loaded, unlocked shotgun in Robart's bedroom. The child did not know it was dangerous and accidentally fired the shotgun. Braxton was hit and passed away soon after. At that time, Carl and his wife, Teresa, lived in their home in western Michigan. Their house was a place where family often gathered and shared happy moments. But that day, the presence of an unlocked gun changed everything and brought great sadness. The event happened when the 6-year-old relative found the loaded shotgun that was not locked up. Without understanding the danger, the child pointed the gun at Braxton and pulled the trigger. The shotgun went off, and Braxton was hurt very badly. He passed shortly after. Braxton's 8-year-old sister saw what happened. She will always carry the memory of that day. The family felt deep pain as they faced losing such a young boy and the situation that caused it. After the event, Carl Robart was charged under Michigan's new law about safe gun storage. This law requires that guns must be locked up safely when children are around. In August 2024, Robart said he would not contest the charges. He admitted that the gun was not stored properly, which led to this sad event. In October 2024, the judge gave Carl Robart a prison sentence. He must spend at least 38 months and could be in prison for up to 15 years. The judge said this tragedy could have been stopped. He criticized Robart for not listening to family members who warned him to lock up his guns. The judge said, "All you had to do was listen to the people in your life that were telling you to put these loaded guns away, and you didn't." This event was not caused by someone wanting to hurt others, but it showed why owning a gun comes with serious responsibility. Not locking up the shotgun, even after warnings, led to a young boy losing his life. This case showed what can happen when safety rules are ignored, especially where children live. When the judge gave the sentence, Carl Robart said he was very sorry. He said, "There's a lot of things I could tell you. It's not going to change what happened." His words showed how much he regretted what took place and the effects of what happened. Braxton's father, Dominic Dykstra, spoke at the sentencing. He shared how much pain and sadness his family felt. He said, "The people we thought we could trust with our kids failed. I will never get to hug my son again. I will never get to hear his precious voice or his silly laugh." Arthur Burton Shermer, often called AB or Art, was a retired pastor. He served at Reader's United Methodist Church in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. He was married 2 times. His first wife, Jewel, passed away in 1999. His second wife, Betty, passed away in 2008. At first, both cases were thought to be accidents, but later, new information made people suspicious. In July 2008, Shermer said he and Betty had a car accident. He explained they swerved to avoid a deer. He said Betty was not wearing a seatbelt. Because of that, she was thrown around inside the car. She later passed from serious head injuries. But when investigators looked closer, they found problems with his story. The crash happened at a low speed. Also, Betty's body didn't have signs of trying to protect herself from injury. This made people question the accident story. Further checks showed Betty had been hit on the head with a heavy object before the car crash. This meant the accident was set up to hide what really happened to her. Jewel Shermer's passing in 1999 was also suspicious. She passed after what was said to be a fall down the stairs, but the way she was hurt did not fully match a simple fall. She had heavy injuries on the back of her head, similar to Betty. A family member had concerns about something being wrong, but the first investigation did not find clear answers. The case was never fully closed, and Shermer was not charged then. The investigation changed in 2010. Joseph Mustante, who was married to Shermer's church secretary, took his own life in Shermer's office. Before this happened, Mustante found out that his wife and Shermer were having a secret relationship. This discovery made the authorities look again at what happened to both Jewel and Betty. During this review, they found evidence that connected Shermer to the passings of his wives. This led to his arrest. In 2013, Shermer was found guilty of first-degree intentional harm and trying to hide evidence in Betty's case. The jury decided that he had struck her with a crowbar and then created the car accident story to cover it up. He was given a life sentence in prison without any chance of early release. The judge pointed out how serious the case was and how wrong it was for a religious leader to betray people's trust. Shermer said he was not guilty during the trial and sentencing. Up next is a backyard in LA and a betrayal worth $1.6 million. Robert Louis Baker was born in 1962. Details about his childhood and early life are mostly unknown. What is clear is that his adult years were troubled and complex. Before becoming involved in the case with Fabio Cementilli, Baker already had a difficult past. He had been convicted of a criminal offense involving misconduct. Additionally, he worked for some time as an actor in adult films. These parts of his history gave a complicated view of who he was. On January 23, 2017, something terrible happened to Fabio Cementilli. Fabio was a popular hairstylist in Los Angeles. He was 49 years old and lived in Woodland Hills with his wife Monica. On that day, Fabio was found seriously injured in the backyard of his home. He had been stabbed multiple times with a sharp object. At first, the police thought someone had tried to break into the house and that it was a random event. But this theory soon changed. As investigators looked deeper, they discovered that the situation was far from random. They found out that Robert Baker had been involved in a secret affair with Monica, Fabio's wife. This affair played a major role in what happened to Fabio. Prosecutors later said that Baker and Monica worked together to hurt Fabio. The goal was for Monica to collect a large life insurance payout of $1.6 million after Fabio's passing. During the trial, the evidence showed that Baker had planned the event carefully. Witnesses and forensic reports revealed that Baker stabbed Fabio while he was sitting outside on his patio. It happened suddenly and aggressively. After the strikings, Baker took Fabio's car, a Porsche, and drove away from the scene. The car was later found abandoned, many miles away from the home. The investigation gathered strong proof against Baker. This included DNA and blood evidence found at the scene. Surveillance footage and other witness statements helped paint a clear picture of what happened. Given the strength of this evidence, Baker made a strategic choice in July 2023. He pleaded no contest to charges of first-degree harm and conspiracy to commit harm. He also accepted special allegations that the act was done for financial gain and that it was planned in advance, known as lying in wait. Finally, on June 23, 2025, the court sentenced Baker to life in prison without any chance of parole. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office said Baker's actions showed careful planning and were motivated by greed. The judge agreed and called the act a serious betrayal. Throughout the trial and sentencing, Baker maintained he was not guilty, but the evidence against him was too strong to ignore. The case showed how a planned betrayal between close people led to a tragic event. It also showed the lengths some people might go for money. James Craig was a 47-year-old dentist from Aurora, Colorado. He was married to Angela Craig, who was 43 years old and a mother of 6. They were active members of their local church and community. The couple had been married for 23 years. They also ran a dental practice together. James was known as a professional and was close to his wife. People often saw them together at social and work events. But there was a hidden side to James. In the months before Angela's passing, he was involved in several relationships outside of his marriage. These secret relationships, along with money problems and a wish to avoid a divorce, seemed to have played a big part in what happened to Angela. In March 2023, Angela started feeling sick with symptoms like dizziness and tiredness. She went to the hospital several times, but doctors could not find what was wrong. During this time, James was seen searching the internet for information about poisons. Some of his searches were questions like, how much pure arsenic causes harm to a person? And can arsenic be found during an examination after death? These searches showed that he was planning to harm Angela. Later, investigators found out that James had been putting dangerous chemicals into Angela's protein shakes. These chemicals included cyanide and tetrahydrozoline, which is a substance found in eye drops you can buy at a store. Even though Angela's health was getting worse, she kept drinking the shakes, not knowing they were poisoned. On March 18, 2023, while she was in the hospital and very weak, Angela was given a harmful amount of cyanide. Soon after, she was declared brain dead. James's reasons for doing this were several. He wanted to end the marriage without going through a divorce. This might have helped him keep money and avoid the social problems that come with separation. The secret relationships also suggest he wanted to be free from his marriage. James Craig was arrested soon after Angela's passing. He was charged with causing her passing on purpose. The lawyers for the state showed strong evidence, including his internet searches about poisons, the timing of Angela's symptoms, and the dangerous chemicals found in her body. The defense said there was not enough proof that he meant to harm her. They suggested that Angela's passing could have been an accident.